Hello to all you Saga warlords out there. Rodge here. Welcome to another Saga Thursday, your regular source for that Saga goodness. Today we're going to take a look at a local event I attended, Saga Rising Storm. Hopefully we can generate some Age of Magic discussion and take a look at what's been working for me, at least give you guys a peek into our local Saga community, and hopefully we can get some good chats going here. But this is not going to be a demon faction review, even though I will be playing the demons and giving my thoughts. This won't really be in-depth battle reports. I considered taking pictures, but I am a slow player to begin with, and so I decided against it because I would slow my games down even further, and I believe that was the right call. I did finish my first game, but my second game I only got through turn 4, and my last game, the big one, I only got through turn 5, so I need to pick up my pace if I'm going to do that, but hopefully we'll have some separate battle reports in the future here. So we do have plenty of pictures, thanks to Mr. Jeremy, and you might see some pics of my games, recognize what I'm talking about here, but otherwise we'll have a nice selection of everything as we go through it. So without further ado, let's get into this. So we had 12 players. There was 4 Lords of the Wild, 3 Great Kingdoms, 2 Under-Earthers, and then we had 1 of each of the remainder there. So this was meant to be more of a introductory type event, so painting wasn't necessarily required. We weren't using the special terrain rules or any of the legendary stuff, so kind of basic going in, and I think it worked out pretty well. I was taking my demons, so we saw these in the first kind of the introductory Age of Magic battle report. So I've been favoring these guys over my Lords of the Wild Wood Elf army, and so these are both Warhammer Fantasy armies. Based off the models that I had, I thought I could make a better Otherworld army versus what I had for the Wild there. So if I'm going to do Lords of the Wild, I think I just need to add a couple units to that list. But the other thing was I haven't seen a lot of people playing the Otherworld. There's nobody in our local area, and some of our adjacent areas nobody's playing them, so I'm just doing something different. So with my demons, I do have a large collection, but I still don't have every troop type covered, so I didn't really have any obvious Hearthguard choices, so that has pushed me towards a giant Warlord on a Beast, which I'm using a Demon Prince model for, and 11 Resilience 2, and this guy is kind of the linchpin of everything. I've been digging him. I took a Sorcerer, and the spells I decided on were Eruptions, which gives you flight. This spell is money. I use it almost every turn. The other 2 spells, I kind of been mixing things up. In the end, I decided to take Bane, as I was using Drain Life previously. So Bane just gives the enemy a -1 to their hit rolls or re-rolls 6s or something like that. Drain Life will give them a fatigue, but you have to roll a dice. So a lot of games I would cast it multiple times, and I could just never roll a 3+ or a 4+. So I'm trying to take spells that even at their basic level will still do something for me. And the last one I chose was Elemental Power. So this one could give you light cover, hard cover, or resilience 4. So my hope was to use it to generate hard cover on my warriors, and then I could kind of combo that with a board ability, Supernatural Stature, to block melee hits on 3s instead of 4s. So that would be quite amazing. And worst case scenario, though, he could cast it, the sorceress could cast it on himself. Most of my games, I did have her flying. So even at the base level, she would count as being in light cover, so I could have some shooting protection to her. So that was the idea. We'll see how that worked out. I took 4 points of warriors, and 10 of these guys were turned. So I made 3 units, a unit of 10 flyers, because I had these Fury models, and 10 is what I had, so 10 is what I chose. And then I gave me 2 units of 11 heavy weapon warriors, which these guys are money. They're boss. They're awesome. And having 11 is kind of interesting. Some of the abilities I noticed key off of having 12 attacks. So having 11, not too bad. I had 2 units of 2 quadruped creatures, and we didn't really decide, but most of the people decided on their creatures and monsters up front. If you look at the book, it's not really clear per se whether you need to do that or not, or if you can switch them at the start of deployment as equipment options. They are listed as equipment options in the very back of the book. I think most people have been playing at the former, where you have to write them down on your list, whether you're going to take bipeds, quadrupeds, flyers, scourge, titan, behemoth, etc. And for my last point, it was kind of a tough call here, trying to figure out what I wanted. I could have took more creatures. I ended up taking a lieutenant, as he is armor 5. So there's a couple ways to get to armor 6 on the board, which is always great. Some of the abilities require presence for the demons, so he has presence. And then I took another unit of 4 warriors as a saga dice generator, which I'm not usually a fan of. I like everything up there on the lines, getting in on the action. And we'll see how that worked out. I don't have a monster model, so that's one thing I'm going to rectify here soon enough. And let's get into it. I don't have pictures of all this. It's all being rebased, so I got everything rebased. These were Warhammer Fantasy squares. I partially rebased them for 40K, and I've reversed that. So I'm working on getting everything rebased with photos. We're going to do some gallery videos of the demons, but you'll see some bits and pieces of these guys in the photos regardless. So first game, I was playing Jeremy, who was stepping in as the ringer. There was supposed to be one more fella from Chicago coming up, but he did not make it. So Jeremy was running the undead. He had a Necromancer Warlord, 8 Hearthguard, a unit of Mindless, and the rest warriors, split into 3 or 4 units here. And in this scenario, you targeted an enemy unit, and that unit is worth double the slaughter points, massacre points, whichever it happened to be. So I chose his Hearthguard, and he chose a unit of warriors, and it worked out pretty well. So this game worked out kind of how my game plan was here, which was to target the enemy sorcerer. And it worked out even better because he was the Necromancer, he was the Warlord. And it's, the more in our test games, I haven't really gone after the Sorcerer, but the Sorcerer, if you have one, it's extremely difficult to protect if the enemy has flyers. You would need 3 units to surround it, essentially. And then you'd have to use all their saga dice to move these around. You could get in your own way. So if you have flyers, it's very difficult to protect the Sorcerer. And he's only armor 3, resilience 1. He does have bodyguards. I believe all the sorcerers have bodyguards. I don't have my rulebook here to check that, but so a lot of people's battle plans revolve around their sorcerers and the spells that they get, and I think maybe they over rely on them. So my plan was to use the creatures actually to use the flight spell, use their speed to get to their sorcerer, and probably have a couple fatigues, but they're creatures, so you might want to leave them on. I can use the Might ability to get an extra 3 attacks, 3 rerolls. So statistically, you should wipe out the enemy sorcerer in 1 round of combat, but you want to have a couple dice queued up. So that was kind of my battle plan going in there, to take them, throw them off their game by killing their sorcerer early, and then kind of sweeping up, striking at various points. And that worked out for the most part here, because first turn, Jeremy kind of moved forward a little bit, and he did have a field next to his Necromancer, but he wasn't in it, so that blocked the creature lane. But I did have a lane for my warriors with the heavy weapons, so I flew him in first turn. So he had first turn, I had second turn. So I flew him in, I had a loaded board, and basically just put a pounding on his Necromancer, and his Hearthguards were nearby, close enough to bounce all the hits too, but I ended up, I think I had 2 or 3 goes at it, and in the end, wiped out all the Hearthguard. He had to make a choice whether to keep the Necromancer alive or shunt him to the Hearthguard. He ended up shunting him to the Hearthguard, wiped out the Hearthguard, and then at the end of my turn, the Necromancer was still alive, but he was fully exhausted. So on his turn, he kind of took that unit out. On my turn, I just sent in, actually, my lieutenant, sent him over there, and he finished the job. He did die to the necromancer, which was embarrassing. But after that, it was a quick game of cleanup, just focusing my efforts on wiping out one unit of warriors at a time, trying to ignore the mindless, as you do. And then Jeremy's goal was to finish off those warriors he had targeted, which he did. But so, kind of hit hard, hit fast on the first turn, and then he was kind of on the back foot for the rest of it. So that was it. I got a big win, round one. Going into round two, I was playing Matt, who was running Lords of the Wild. So we've tangled a couple times, and now he was running a Warlord mounted with a composite bow. He had either a Titan or a Behemoth. He had 8 Hearthguard with composite bows. He did have a Sorcerer, and he did have, I think, maybe 2 points of Warriors, 1 in a 12 pack. So maybe 2.5 points. 1 in a 12 pack for his big shooting attack, and then 2 units of 4 warriors. And he kind of spread everything out. He was a victim of the portal in previous games. So, he just kind of spread out. I didn't want to have all his stuff concentrated in one area. And this game was interesting. In previous games, he had used the spell to create a terrain piece, and then used Saga board ability to turn it into a Titan and beat my guys up. So he actually didn't have that spell. I don't recall exactly what spells he was using, but first turn, I think I had the first turn, so he kind of waffled around a little bit. He came in, he was going for the turn terrain into Titan strategy on his first turn, rolled a rare and some uncommons to activate everything. So he got that going. He kind of misjudged the distance a little bit. We're not sure if he misjudged it or didn't move it far enough. So he turned a forest into a Titan, moved it 1, and then at the end of that, we measured, and he was still out. So we don't know. We don't remember if he measured or not. So he was out, so he had to move his Warlord over out of position to do a We Obey of the Titan into my warriors, and so he killed a couple guys, but then that kind of put his Warlord out of position. I used Portal to teleport my flyers next to his general there. And then I used the Abyssal Breath for shooting with the +1. I had a couple rares. Didn't do any wounds, but I did end up flying my Warlord over there with Eruptions. And then he went into his Warlord and took him out. And then on my turn, his kind of units were all out of position, and I used Flood of Power. So this is kind of my other thing I did. Went for the Sorcerer. So his Sorcerer was behind the Warlord, and I was really hoping to take out the Warlord with the shooting if I got lucky. Otherwise, I could just run into the Sorcerer. But I used Flood of Power, which gives me +1 armor. So my Warlord was really my striker in most of my games I've been playing, and I used the Flood of Power +1 armor on the enemy's turn to raise my armor from 5 to 6, which is amazingly juicy. So that made him really quite tricky to deal with as far as his shooting goes. I'm pretty sure he had trouble rolling rares after that. There is that great Lords of the Wild ability to just get automatic hits, which would certainly bypass the armor 6 issue. So he was kind of drawn out of position. He had some creatures move over. Couldn't really do much, and there was a lot of interesting maneuvers and strategies. I think we only did get through turn 4 with everything going on, some tough decisions, but he never ended up getting my Warlord, even though I thought for sure he was going to die. So just kind of plugged away, took out his creatures. Oh yeah, he did have some creatures too. I don't think I mentioned that. Anyways, this one's kind of hard to describe. A lot of action going on here. A lot of moving his Hearthguard up, moving him back, trying to get the Sorcerer, not quite doing it, and stuff like that. But it ended up being a victory for me in the end. Not a big one, but a victory nonetheless. Going into my last game, I remember more about this game. Monty, he had won 2 games. I had won 2 games. So Monty was using the Great Kingdoms. He was using a Warlord on a flying mount. a paladin on a flying mount. He was using a Titan, 12 bow levy, 12 firearm levy. He had 2 bipeds hanging out in the back, 2 biped creatures, and then 2 units of warriors, I think. His sorcerer had 2 anti-shooting spells. One was miss, and then there's like a type of a shield spell in Lore of Light. I thought that was interesting that he was so concerned about shooting. And then the last one was Spear of Light, which is downright nasty, and I was definitely worried about that one. So that put him on the hit list. And this scenario was heavily in my favor, just based off what it was. So if you got to the enemy's deployment zone with your troops, you would get bonus points. If you had your troops in your own deployment zone, you had negative points, thereabouts. And so I was on them from turn 1 with my flyers, maneuvering, teleporting, what have you. So most of this battle took place in his deployment zone or in front of his deployment zone. So it was a stand-up fight, which I don't think was great for the other world. You want to use your movement shenanigans to strike where you're least expected, then get out of there. But I ended up striking, staying there, and just kind of towing the battle line. And then the Great Kingdoms can certainly generate, I think, a lot more attack and defense dice for a stand-up fight. But anyways, this one going in, Monty had first turn. He moved up a little bit. He left those sorcerer exposed, so I flew in. Some great weapon warriors and took him out first turn. No more Spear of Light. Popped fatigue on almost all of his units, and that kind of set the pace of me throwing a unit in there. He kind of, on his turn, dealing with it, and then me throwing something else in, his turn kind of dealing with it. So like a tit for tat type thing. And on the following turns, I was like, oh man, I got to take out that shooting. So I tried to run in a unit of creatures into his firearm levy, and they had 1 or 2 fatigues on them. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to wipe these guys out. We ended up popping all of the Great Kingdom abilities. So be forewarned, those levy, they seem like a weak link, but they are strong, my friend. So at the end of it, I think he went from 4 to 8 attacks, and then had a bajillion defense dice blocking on 4s. And so my creatures went in. At the end of it, my creatures were exhausted, and I killed one levy. So I'm like, that's how you do it. But so kind of like with the Scots, you just have to recognize you're going to have a not so favorable combat. So I was able to go in with my warlord on his other levy unit and take those guys down to half strength, but I didn't get him below 6. So I was quite demoralized. His turn, his paladin came in, killed my creatures. I was able on my turn to kill the paladin with some warriors. So it's a real tit for tat kind of game. I did have a slight kind of victory point, killing point advantage at the end of it. We did get through 5 turns, like I said. So maybe it was like 18 to 15 or something like that. But it was nasty. A lot of exhausted units at the end there. And then once we added in those scenario factors, some units didn't get out of his deployment zone. So that pushed it into a really solid victory for the Otherworld Demon. So I ended up being 3 wins. And I think there was maybe another guy who had 3 wins. Scott Durung was playing Lords of the Wild. He ended up getting second. He had most slaughter. So somehow I came out on top of him. I'm not sure. I think he won all 3 of his games. But, he didn't win all 3 of his games because Monty beat him. So I was the only one with 3 wins, I believe. So that's what pushed me over. So Scott Durung, he lost to Monty, but he won his last game. So he had the most slaughter points, and he came in second overall. I came in first. At some point here, you're going to see my beautiful victory photo. And then I actually did get the best appearance with my demon. So that was an army I spent a lot of time on many years ago. And spent some time rebasing them just now. So, that was a really fun event. So kind of my thoughts going into it is the flying flying is powerful. It's good. The ability to maneuver to a different place on the board is huge. Having access to so many flyers for demons is great. I do think the flying creatures take a attack penalty. The Scourge is weaker than the other monsters. I think that's appropriate. Going into it, I thought that was unnecessarily hampered and made it a non-competitive type choice. But going in, I think that it is appropriate. And if you can get flyers without that penalty, so warriors, heroes for the demons, and I'm thinking Great Kingdoms, you can take the flying mounts. So if you can get those without having a reduction in combat power, I think those are going to be very useful, powerful units. And I think it will make you want to take some shooting or something to keep those guys honest, because those are powerful units. Heavy weapon warriors are great. My only experience with heavy weapon have been the Hearthguard for my Danes, which the Hearthguard are vulnerable to begin with. The heavy weapons make them even more vulnerable, so I never really liked using them. But with the warriors, going from armor 4 to 3, who cares? I got so many of these guys. They're just great. The board for Otherworld doesn't have a lot of attack buffs, so just getting that +1 to hit is kind of our main attack buff. The Lieutenant, I don't think I'm going to use this guy anymore. I think I would have been better off using a big monster. There's a certain abilities that work well with him. I did get his armor up from 5 to 6 on many occasions, but he just has 4 attacks. You can get to 7 with the might ability, re-rolling some hits, but that's still not really that impressive or scary. He's only resilience 1. He's exhausted after 3. His conjuring ability, I've never been able to use it. So I think that the idea is, I think I should be able to. The problem is you have to use it in your orders phase before you've moved anything. So he has to be within very short, which is very difficult. So, I think in the theory, I have units that are depleted. I don't mind sending in units to die. So like if my heavy weapon warriors have been reduced to 2 or 3 guys, I'll send them into combat just to put another fatigue on the enemy for a strike on a different unit. So if the unit's going to die anyways, I could theoretically sacrifice a guy, get a Saga dice, and then sacrifice them by charging them in, putting a fatigue. So, in the end, it doesn't really change anything. But I can never get the Lieutenant in the right place to use that ability. I wasn't going to just use it every turn on a unit. From turn 1, I see it more as a late turn kind of things. So if anyone's having success with that, just sacrificing guys every turn, giving your opponent slaughter points, let me know. I didn't get much use out of it. I'm not going to be running him anymore. That's kind of my thoughts on that. Flyer's good. Heavy weapon's good. Lieutenant, not so good. I want to add some monsters. I'm going to get 2 or 3 of those monsters, I think, going forward here to mix things up. But the Otherworld, great weapon, very powerful ability with doppelgangers. I'm not going to get into a lot of these. I'm getting close to being able to do an Otherworld faction review, I think. The problem is there's just so many options for your army that it's hard to, I want to play everything. I want to run all creatures, all monsters, all warriors, get some Hearthguard. I want to get some Hearthguard in there. Beginner Hearthguard, I think, could benefit from supernatural stature. If you're fighting defensively, you could block on 3s, hopefully, because you need to generate a bunch of attacks still in order to benefit from that, because you need 3 hits. So a lot of stuff to think about. I had a blast at the event. Thanks to Jeremy for running it. Thanks to everybody for showing up. We're going to be doing more of these events in our area here. So if you are in the Midwest, stay tuned. There will be more details in the upcoming months about future Age of Magic, and we're going to take it to the other ages as well. We're hopefully going to be bolstering our local Saga community. Hopefully you've been using Age of Magic to your advantage to do the same in your local area. think it's a great way to get those guys with the dusty old Warhammer armies to break them out and get them on the battlefield. So, yeah, if you have any questions, I'm trying to go through pretty quick about my games, about any of the factions I faced or abilities that I used. Please let me know if you've been playing Otherworld. I'd be curious how your experience stacks up with mine. But definitely post in the comments. Let me know about your Age of Magic games, how they've been going, what your favorite units are, favorite spells, and yeah, I want to chat some more Age of Magic with all of you. So hopefully you can chime in with whatever you got there. But I think that's going to be it for this week. One last item. There's the 2019 Saga Fact just came out, so make sure to head on over to Studio Tomahawk and check that out. I want to catch you guys later. See ya. Bye.
Saga!